Hello, friends. Welcome back to Consider Yourself Lucky. Today, I want to open up the topic and talk a little bit about early grief. Specifically, what not to say to a widow in early grief and how you can help instead. So, there's a lot of opinions on what constitutes as early grief, like what is the time frame? Again, I'll say this till I am blue in the face. Grief is different for everybody. Everybody's grief journey is different, timelines are different. Everything is different. I have read that early grief is considered like 3 months, 6 months, whatever. I remember taking a grief course with David Kessler, and he is like a world renowned grief expert. And he says early grief is like 2 to 3 years, which I can completely agree with because realistically, that first year, you're in survival mode, you're in shock, you're like, what the heck has happened? And your whole world is just turned upside down, right? And then that second year, you're like, okay, this is my life. What am I going to do with it now, right? So to me, early grief definitely makes sense when he says, 2 to 3 years. And I think that's really important too to note because we are often under this assumption that you're going to spend the first couple months crying and then life is just going to go on and everything's going to be peachy after that, right? And I think the more we talk about early grief being this really potentially long time frame for a lot of people, I think people will maybe show up a bit differently instead of just thinking, a couple months in and, oh, Melissa's okay. We don't need to check in on her or show up anymore, right? I think the more that people realize that it is really a long game, people might come to think of it really differently. So that's just a little bit of food for thought as we get into this topic. So let's start off with the things that are said to us when our person dies, right? I know I'm going to miss a lot, but these are definitely the top phrases that I heard in the beginning that honestly, I know people are trying to help. I know they're trying to like give us words of wisdom or advice or some way for us to kind of shift the thoughts that are going through our heads, but it is just not helpful. I would rather someone not say something than say these phrases to me because honestly, as awful as it sounds, I just wanted to punch them in the face. I'm like, I do not need to hear any of this right now, right? But it's just kind of this thing that we're taught that these are the things we say, as simple as, I'm so sorry for your loss. It's just like a standard thing. So when stuff like this happens to somebody, people don't know what to say. So they generally stick to these kind of phrases. So the first thing, everything happens for a reason. I still do not like hearing this. Yes, I believe that our lives are kind of planned out ahead of time, and even the really bad things are going to lead to good things, et cetera, et cetera. But especially in our early moments of grief, we do not want to hear this. Like, no, everything happens for a reason. Really? So you're saying my husband dying and leaving his young widow and young kids was a reason? Like, it's something that we don't want to hear. So just refrain from saying it, all right? Because sometimes things don't happen for a reason. Sometimes life is just shitty and it throws you curveballs, and that's why it has happened, right? We don't want to think of a reason in that time. We just want to be upset about what's happened. Another phrase, they are gone to a better place. And of course, this is, I do believe in God. I believe in heaven. I grew up going to church. I'm definitely a Christian. My faith has been tested a lot since this has happened. But ultimately, I do think that there is something after we die, 100%. But saying they are gone to a better place, when he was a healthy, thriving 42-year-old man, I also don't want to hear that. Like, you're trying to tell me that him being in our cozy home with our kids, having a Friday movie night, sitting out by the fire, watching our kids grow and thrive and play, like you're trying to tell me that he's in a better place. Again, not something we want to hear. Another phrase, someday this will all make sense. And while I'm sure that's true to an extent that maybe we look back on life, even looking back to how I met my husband, all the steps were there as to how I met him, right? Like, again, I totally believe that our life is planned out and what's going to happen is going to happen, right? But we don't want to make sense of it, especially right now. We don't want to think or talk about why our person had to die, right? In that moment, nothing makes sense. And having someone say, well, it's going to make sense at some point, it really puts down our thoughts when we just want to be sad and upset, and then people try to say these things to kind of cheer us up, right? Just let us be with our thoughts. Another phrase: you're young, you will love again. Yes, that may be true. And maybe it won't be true. Maybe Dana was my one true love. Maybe I will never love again. Like, we don't know, right? We have no idea what our life holds for us after something like this happens. And yes, I may be young, and yes, maybe I will meet the love, a second love of my life again, my chapter two, and maybe I won't. But again, it's just one of those things that we just don't want to hear it because we don't know what's going to happen, right? And it can be scary thinking that you are still young and potentially have all this life to live, and you may not live it with anybody, right? So that can be a really scary thought for somebody. So just keep that in mind when you feel the need to say something like that to somebody. Another phrase is time heals all wounds. I can confidently say time does not heal wounds. Time does make things easier because you are a stronger person because of it, right? You have figured out ways to live, and you have figured out that, life is short and you need to be here and enjoy it as much as you can. But as far as like time heals everything, I don't believe it does. I believe we grow around it and we figure out ways to live with the time that we have left, right? So these are really like the absolute last things that we want to hear. Again, I know that as people, we're just programmed to want to say these things, but a lot of times it's better to just say nothing and let us be in our grief, upset, crying, rather than these things being said to us, because they just really don't help. Like I remember, people coming to me and being like, oh, I saw so-and-so and she sends big hugs and kisses to you. And, at that point, I did not want to hear that from anybody. I would think to myself, oh yeah, can she send me my husband back? Like, what are hugs and kisses going to do to me? You know what I mean? Like, just really, like, really weird grief thoughts going through your mind. And yeah, sometimes I just like want to vomit in my mouth, because it's like, yeah, I don't want to hear that. I want you to be as angry as me, right? So those are some things, food for thought the next time you are surrounded by somebody who's grieving, or a widow in particular, or a widower in particular. Another way you can help a widow or a widower is, don't ask us what we need or how you can help us, right? Again, you get this a lot. You get texts, you get phone calls. Please tell me how I can help. Please let me know what you need from us, And in all honesty, we have no freaking idea what we need. None. We are in such like a discombobulated state that we have no idea how we are even getting out of bed every morning, right? So the fact that you want us to think about something that we need help with is just completely like out the window. I don't want to have to think about that, right? Just do things for people. Just show up, send a text and say, hey, I'll be over with dinner at 5:00 p.m. and I'll take so-and-so to dance for you today. Or I'll pick up the kids from school, just come over and be in our presence, and, tidy up the house or unload the dishwasher, or send food without us asking. Just call and say, hey, can I pick up the kids and take them to the park for you? What time would work better, right? Like, don't leave open-ended questions. Just say that you are going to do something. Even now, my family is really good for just like sending texts like that and being like, hey, I'm going to take the kids skating. I can pick up whoever. That is more helpful than you will ever know. And me being, 20 months out, it's still helpful for me, because half the time I still don't know what I want. So definitely just show up for people. Say you're going to do something and do it. Don't give us, you could say something like, hey, would it help you if I picked up groceries today or did laundry today, right? At least give us a choice. And then we can be like, oh, actually laundry would be really helpful today, right? So don't ask what we need, just do. It's like amazing for us when we don't have to think about all the stuff we need help with, because there's just so much. We're so overwhelmed and we have no freaking idea. Most of the time, we'd rather just lay in bed and cry in the dark. So just show up, right? Another way you can help us in early grief is to keep checking in, but don't expect a response, right? There are moments when even now, I feel really talkative and I want to be around people and I respond to text messages right away. And there are a lot of times you won't hear from me for a few days, right? So even just a quick, I just wanted to let you know I'm thinking of you. No need to respond, but I'm here. Just like that. Don't take it personally if you don't hear from us. Another way you can help us is to not fix, just listen. So this kind of goes back to all these phrases that people like to say. If we are having moments, if we want to get stuff off of our chest, if we want to cry, if we want to whatever, honestly, you don't even need to say anything. Just being beside us, just listening to the things we have to say is such a big help to us. It really is nice to have just that companionship near us. And we don't expect anything. We don't expect you to come up with resolves for our problems. We just want someone to listen and to not immediately have to fix something because there's nothing to be fixed. We just need a friend in that moment. Another way you can help us is by remembering our person. A lot of times people just don't want to talk about the person that died because they're afraid it's going to bring up memories. They're afraid it's going to make us think about them again. And honestly, if there's one thing you take from this episode, please know that we never stop thinking about our loss. Like it's literally in our brain 24/7. There's not a time when I'm not walking around this house, doing groceries, recording this podcast episode, thinking to myself, wow, my husband's dead, right? It's an all consuming thought. You are forever thinking about it. So when people don't mention it, it's just like, it's really, do you not know what's happened in my life? It's almost worse not to mention it, right? So definitely remember their person, say their name, share memories. If it's something that's being shared and all of a sudden we start to cry, like that's okay. It's the fact that you remember and say their name that is just such a big deal to us because most people just don't want to talk about it. They don't want to bring it up. They want to forget that it's happened because it's uncomfortable for them. Meanwhile, it's all consuming for us. So don't feel afraid to say somebody's name or say, oh, so-and-so would have loved that, eh? Or do you remember the time? We need to keep talking about them because it really, really helps us. And at some point, it becomes a little bit easier to talk and laugh about them, right? And we just want to know that they are not forgotten. Another way to really help a widow during early grief is to respect her boundaries and that there are going to be days where it's very up and down. I kind of touched on this earlier, but honestly, there are some weeks where I am really struggling. My mood shows it, the way I talk to people, the way I respond to text messages, the way I don't answer phone calls or text messages. And then there are some weeks where I am like really feeling good and, I can be happy thinking about Dana and I can be happy where my life is going and all this stuff. And then some weeks it just, you know, goes down again. And that's just the reality of grief. And I really don't want people to take it personally because it's not personal. Just because I don't respond to your text message for a few days or whatever, or I don't answer your phone call. Honestly, some days it really takes a lot to show up. And some days we just rather not show up. So if someone needs space, if someone needs you to be around them, listen, like be open to what they are saying and their boundaries, and definitely don't take offense to it at all because it's nothing personal. Another way we can really show up for grievers is to think long term, right? As time moves on, grievers get forgotten. It doesn't matter how special your person was, how big the funeral was, how many lives they've touched. It does not matter. People go on with their lives and it's reality. It's what happens. And we are still left here dealing with this catastrophic loss, right? We are the ones living it day in and day out, being in the same space that we shared. We're the ones doing it all, right? And as time moves, we get forgotten. People stop checking in. People stop showing up like they did. People really close to you, right? Like it's a really strange thing. And when it happens to you, you think, oh, that's not going to happen to me, but it does. People just stop showing up because people get on with their lives. It's very simple. And one way you can really help out is to be that one person that doesn't forget. The person that checks in on anniversaries, the person that checks in on birthdays. Oh, I know it's so and so's birthday today. Just wanted you to know I'm thinking about you. Checking in months later, still being the person that shows up with food on a Friday night or sends groceries to your house, right? All these things are still huge for us, and even more so after time has passed, because that's when the silence like really hits and really stings, and you're left with this what now? So definitely be that person that continues to show up long term. And lastly, I want to say this is coming from a young widow's perspective who has young kids. If there is one way you want to show up for us, it's showing up for us within our home and our kids' lives. It is freaking hard doing the job of two parents, right? Not only was I left with all the things that I have to do, but then I had to do all the things that my husband has to do. And while, yes, I do have help and I have a lot of support, it is next to impossible to keep up with everything. I am a pretty planned and type A personality. I am not as much anymore because I would drive myself crazy trying to do all the things. But three kids, all in school, all doing things, extracurriculars, trying to maintain my home, groceries, signing forms for school, like cutting the lawn. It's crazy the amount of things I have to do in a day. And if you want to show up for someone, take care of those tasks at home. Just show up and say, I'm going to cut your lawn. Start being the person that picks up groceries. Say, I'm going to take so and so here every week for you, right? Those are the things that we really need help with, because goodness knows it's impossible to keep up on it all. So that would be a really big piece of advice, especially with the kids. They get it. They're grieving too, just as much as we are, but it's different. They still want to keep up with all those things. They don't understand why mommy can't be in two places at once, right? So the more you can take off a widow or a widower's plate, the more it helps. Like, it helps us more than you will ever know, even one little thing. I hope that episode was helpful. I hope it gave you a little bit of insight into early grief and how you can help a widow or a widower or anybody grieving, really. Like, this can be used for anybody. Obviously, I'm sharing my particular experience, but it really can be used for anybody. Keep showing up. Keep letting us know you're thinking about us. Even if we're not responding back to text messages, keep being there. Keep saying our person's name. And, grief is the one universal thing we will all share at some points in our lives. So it's just really important to, I think, be aware of grief and know how it affects people. Because when it's your time to experience something like this, or somebody close around you, you're going to be better prepared and better equipped to help them or yourself. So thanks for listening, as always, and I will see you in the next episode.